all of a sudden microphoned. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to just start or wait for somebody, so I'm going to just go ahead and start. There's somebody still ringing a bell, I guess. So, all right. I feel like I'm in Switzerland a little bit, and the cows will come in with the bells. Okay, so my name is Lisette Sutherland, and I will start out by saying I am in no way related to Jeff Sutherland. It's just a coincidence, but everybody at every Agile conference asks. And I'm glad that people think that I might be his daughter and not his sister, so that also is good. So it's good. So I wanted to talk today about how to be a high-performing, distributed, agile team. And I've gone around the world and I have interviewed hundreds of companies now, and I've collected all their best tips for how to work online as if you're in the office together. And I want to share some of those tips with you today. So I know that as technology advances, it's getting easier and easier to work with people all over the world. I myself spent 3 years working in a van while I traveled the world with a band, and during the day, I would be working with my team online, and at night, I was the rock star merchandiser for one of my favorite bands, and it was one of the best times of my whole life. So it is possible to be able to travel and to work, as we're seeing with the digital nomad movement. But many of us have to work with distributed teams, and I think that's sort of the reality for most teams nowadays, especially agile teams. And so I'm not here to argue, is remote better than co-located, because it totally depends. It depends on the situation, and it depends on the team, of course. But what happens when we have to work distributed? Then what do we do? And I think that's a far more interesting question to be answering. And I know that in the past, remote communication has been notoriously bad, right? How many people are still using this old spider phone, right? We're like, hey, Bob, it's Lisette. Can you hear me? Yeah, so this is like really the days of past, I hope. I hope that in future conferences that this number goes down and down and down for the people that are still using this. And I gotta be honest, some things are still bad. And I'm specifically talking about Skype for Business, the worst video communication tool on the market today. But in every online meeting that we have, right, we spend the first 10, 15 minutes of every meeting trying to get the technology to work. And hey, are you connected? And so communication is still bad, even with the advances in the technology that we have. But Skype for Business is probably the worst culprit out there. A lot has happened in the last 5 years, and I really think it's time to take another look at how we're working, at the tools that we're using, and the techniques that we're using to do this. So that's what we're going to do today. And first, before I dive into all the tips, I want to give you proof that it is possible. I want to show you a couple of examples of teams who are totally rocking the remote world, so that it gives you some inspiration that, yes, you know, at least it's possible that this is doable. And the first then is an interview that I did just recently, actually, with the CEO of Zapier, Wade Foster. Now, Zapier is a workflow automation tool, one of the most popular ones on the market today, and Wade has a team of over 200 people that has no central office. They all work remotely, and they have built this tool that probably most of the world has used. Everybody's got some sort of Zapier integration at some point. But one of my favorite stories is of the R-Loop team. Now, the R-Loop team built a Hyperloop pod, and the Hyperloop is a super fast transportation system that can take a commute of 7 hours and squeeze it into 30 minutes. So basically, you're just getting into one of these pods, and you're being shot through a gravity tube to your destination. Now, I wouldn't want to be the beta user, but it does sound like a really exciting technology. And what happened was Tom on the R-Loop team was interested in joining the SpaceX competition for this. So SpaceX decided in 2015 they were going to have a competition on who could build a Hyperloop pod. Tom wanted to join, and so he posted in Reddit, hey, is there anybody that would like to join this competition with me? 1 year later, with a team of over 400 remote volunteers from all over the world, they came in finalists in this competition and are actually still working to build this Hyperloop pod. So yes, it is possible to work remotely and to be successful and to be a successful Agile team. I have kind of Darth Vader breath, so apologies for the breathing. Okay. Okay, so if you want to hear the rest of the stories, I have interviewed hundreds of teams now. All of the interviews are available on my podcast, on my website. And just this September, I published the book, Work Together Anywhere. You can see it's a real book. I'm super excited. It took 5 years to do it. So and I have 10 copies with me today. So if you're interested in a copy, just come find me sometime during the day. The one thing that I've learned through all these interviews is that there's no one right way to get remote working right. There is no silver bullet. There is no formula you can follow. I wish there were. I'd be very rich at the moment. But there is no one right way. It's a series of small experimentations that we do on the team. It's experiments that we try, that we fail. What works for one team won't necessarily work for another. We just have to try things out. And so that's sort of the nature of the game. But there are 3 areas in where if you focus here, you're statistically more likely to succeed. Now, the first one is we got to make communicating easy. We need to define what normal behavior is on our team. And we need to create presence and work out loud with our teams. And I want to show you some examples of what people are doing. And the last component of it is we want to infuse fun into what we do, because fun is sort of that magical ingredient that brings out the camaraderie, the team, the smiles, and gets people really enthusiastic about what they're working on. So I'm going to show some examples of fun as well. Now let's talk about how to make communicating easy. And when I say easy, I mean Star Trek easy. So on Star Trek, they have these communicators that sit on their chest, and it's Picard to Riker, or if you have a favorite, Captain Janeway to 7 of 9. And anywhere on the ship, 7 of 9 is going to answer, and there's no coffee shop sounds, there's no driving cars, there's no screaming children in the background. It's crystal clear communication. And that's what I'm talking about on remote teams. We want to have that same thing when we're communicating with each other. People think that they want to be co-located, but I think what they really want is high bandwidth communication. We want to be able to talk to the person online as if they're next to us and not have to shout over the old spider phone or Skype for Business. So the one thing that we really need for crystal clear communication, and it sounds really simple, but we need good internet. And in many, many places around the world, the internet quality is not that great. But internet is sort of the baseline of high bandwidth communication. So wherever possible, we need to increase our internet connection. Easier said than done, but in some cases, not that hard to do. Well, excuse me. And we need to pay attention to sound quality. Like I said, that screaming children, the coffee shop sounds, the car sounds, all of that gets in the way. I had a colleague once who had a bird cage next to her workstation. And it's super cute at first, and then 10 minutes into the conversation, you're done with the bird, right? So we have to really pay attention to sound quality. And there's a great app that just came out in the last few months. It's crisp.ai, and this app actually takes out the background noise for you. So you don't even have to get a noise-canceling headset. This is sort of an app that'll take out the background noise, which is a great thing to have. By the way, I'm going to show a bunch of tools. I'm not an affiliate of any of these tools. I don't get money from anybody. I'm just a slavish fangirl, so just to let you know when we look at these tools. Now, one of the biggest things that I see when I go to companies is, in order to work successfully remotely, we need to have great equipment. It's time to throw out the spider phones. It's time to get rid of Skype for Business, and let's go for some real tools. And I'll show you what those real tools are. So one is, of course, video conferencing technology. There are many, many options on the market available. This one is Zoom. You can get up to 50 people on the call at the same time, which is really great. As you can see, everybody's a bit equal. You can see if somebody's raising their hand or if somebody's tired. Other ones on the market, Blue Jeans, Appear In, Hangouts, Meets, almost anything other than Skype for Business will get you where you want to go. But this one is a really high quality one. And this is sort of the old school conference room setup, right, where we're all huddled around on a conference room table with the spider phone in the middle, looking kind of bored. And this is the new shiny version of the conference room. So not that much different, but what you'll notice is that the remote participants have more presence. They have sort of an equal size when they're coming in the room. There is a board that everybody can see and share with each other. The webcam moves so as to focus on the person who's talking. So a much more enjoyable experience than our old school conference room. Now, I've traveled the world, so that's sort of a marketing picture, but I've traveled the world and trying to see how are people setting themselves up. This is a team in Australia for a company named Envato. So you can see that they've just got a nice high-definition television. They've got the Jabra Speak, which is a great conference room speakerphone in the middle. And they've got the webcam that focuses on people. So you can see that basically when they have two teams, it's sort of an extension of the room. That's how it feels. It's like an extension of the room. Not very difficult. The clicker is a long way away. And there's some great tools on the market today, like Meeting Owl. So if you have meetings where there's some people who are in person and some people who are remote, this is Meeting Owl. This is a 360-degree microphone and camera that will autofocus on the person who's talking. So also still better than the old just a static laptop. This is another company in Australia, a real estate company. They have people in their Australian offices, and they also have people in their China offices. And this is how they have their daily stand-ups every day. They have a series of these stations set up all over the office with a giant screen, a different kind of, it's not the Jabra speaker, it's a different kind of one, but this is where they have their stand-ups throughout the day, and they're just talking with their China offices as if they're there. The microphone and camera are always on. And I'll show another example of that in a bit. And one of the bigger problems that I see at companies is there's not enough place to go to have your video conversation. We don't have enough rooms, there's not enough places for people. And so a lot of companies are starting to take these small rooms and just create a lot of small conference rooms where you can actually have video conversations with your colleagues. Okay, and if you want to get really fancy and spend a lot of money, you can invest in telepresence rooms. And these are basically just rooms with giant monitors, but what you can see with these rooms is that it simulates what it's like to sit across the table from each other. So it actually does become sort of a real-life experience in that way. Okay. So I've got a whole bunch more examples in a bit that I'll show you, and we're going to start to get into some far-out technology. But first, I want to talk about what does it mean to define normal behavior on our teams? What is normal? And a lot of questions about culture come up when we're working up with distributed teams, right? Because we're working with different cultures. And I always say you should take a workshop on culture. That's also very handy. But culture is all about what is normal behavior for our team. So just sitting down and defining what's normal behavior for us. And when I interviewed Beat Buhlmann, he's the head of EMEA for Evernote, he said that at Evernote, they sit down and they define what are their etiquettes for all sorts of different scenarios. So what's your meeting etiquette? So how are you going to behave in meetings? Do people raise their hand? Do they indicate a different way of speaking? They have etiquettes for their email. So they have one subject per email. So if you have a really long email, you have to break them up. So, 5 sentences per email. So they have all kinds of rules about email. They have calendar etiquettes. They have rules for how they're set up their home offices. And all of these ways of making these agreements explicit. Because when we go into the office, we can see how each other are behaving. But when we're remote, we can't see that, and we need to make that behavior explicit. So these team agreements are just sort of the basic outline of what are our ways of working. And most teams don't have this, but I'd say every single team needs it, even when we're working together in person. I've got a whole bunch of free templates and guidelines and stuff available on the website, so if you want to learn how to do a team agreement, these guidelines will take you through. I don't think it's very interesting to sit up here and talk about it because it's a pretty straightforward process, but there's all kinds of agreements that you can download for free. So I want to move on to presence, because presence on a remote team is where it's at. And how do we work out loud and make our work observable to others? And how do we simulate the office online? And I think there's some really fun things that we can do for that. One is using video. And you've seen in all my examples so far, the video's on. It is the age of video, and I know that a lot of people don't like turning the video on. Some people genuinely don't like seeing themselves on the screen, and that's okay. In any good tool, you're able to remove your own video and still see everybody else's. But most of the reason that people don't want to turn their video on is because they're multitasking and they don't want their team members to know it. So video is a great accountability tool, but it also is way more fun for people to see each other on video. There's a lot we can do in this little box, and I'll show you some examples of that. Time magazine has a picture of a person on 95% of the covers that they have. And the reason that they do that is to make it more engaging so that people will pick it up and buy the magazine. So video is extremely important for engagement on the team, and you can just see on the covers there. I've got this distance problem here. Okay, here we go. So pair programmers for ages have been, or programmers for ages have been doing pair programming, as you can see here. So these people are working on the same code base here, and they've got the video on in order to just simulate what it's like to sit at the same computer with each other. And these sort of group work sessions are really powerful in that way. So I actually have a woman that I've been working with for the last 7 years, and she's in California. I live in the Netherlands. And every day we get together and we turn the video on for 5 minutes to say hello, and then we turn the video off with the sound on, and it just simulates what it's like to hang out in the same room together. Now, I've worked with her for 7 years, and we have never met in person, and she's one of my closest friends because it's just such a good working relationship in that way. This is a group in Germany who set up an Ateo board, they call it. It stands for Ein Team, Ein Office, so one team, one office. And they've got this special board here. This is their other team sitting in a different city in Germany, and this is one team here. And they've got the video and sound on all day as if they're working in the same room together. And the board all the way on the left is their task board. So as they finish tasks, they're moving things around and working as if they're in the same room together. This is a company in Australia. They're working with the team in China. This is where they have their webcam to China open all day long with the sound and video on. And I'll show a close-up. So this is what it looks like. So that their team in China and in Australia, they're talking all day through the webcam like this, as if they're in the same office. So it's not quite exactly the same thing, but it's getting pretty close. Okay. And now we're starting to get into some of my favorite tools. This one is a virtual office. It's called Sakoko. And as you can see, it's like an office, but you go to it online. So you open your browser, you open Sakoko, and in each one of these boxes represents a room. Each one of these people or each one of these circles represents a person in the room. Now, you can only see and hear the people that are in the same room with you, but you can see where everybody is on the virtual floor plan. So if I'm down here in the grotto and I want to go join the coffee drinkers up here, I just double-click on the coffee drinkers room, and I'm immediately there. So this sort of solves the problem of having to call people, hey, can you meet next Wednesday? When are you available? I can see where all my colleagues are on the virtual floor plan, and whenever I need somebody, I just knock on their virtual door and go to their room. And now we'll start to get a little bit further out into the weirdness, but I wanted to just show some examples of what other teams are using. This is telepresence. It's called the Kubi. And basically you beam in, just like you would on Skype or Zoom or any other video conferencing tool. But now from the comfort of my desk, I can actually move myself using the arrow keys on my keyboards. So I can sit at the table with my team member if I'm the only remote person, and I can sit at the table and move myself to see who's talking. So for the people that's beaming in, it's really interesting because you can feel who's to the left and who's to the right of you, or even people that are talking behind you. You have a spatial sense. And for the people that are in the room, this small movement humanizes the person a little bit. It gives them more of a human presence in the room. You can like nod yes and say no. And so you can now sit at the table with people like this. Now, usually it's for one person beaming in an all-person meeting, but Jeff here has set up a Kubi so that everybody's beaming in, except for Jeff, who's the in-person. So a bit of an experiment here, but you can see that it also works just as well. It's a little bit of a strange setup, but also something that people are doing. And I wanted to just show a quick video clip, because after I showed this picture at a conference a couple of months ago, somebody sent me a video clip from the 1993 movie Demolition Man, and I just wanted to show sort of a quick video clip. I might have to register it from here. Give me a sec. Okay, just to show you for this, it's sci-fi ancient technology.
been plagued by a pack of subterranean hooligans. You will come to know them as scraps. Men and women who have left the comfort of our society only to spew hostility at the very bosom that they have relinquished. There was a time when we used to look upon these scraps as rather pathetic and relatively harmless. Now they have a leader. Mr. Friendly seems relentless in his ambition to infect our harmony with his venom. He must, of course, be stopped. This rat.
So you can see it looks pretty clunky compared to our brand new shiny technology now that we have with the Kubi, but that was from 1993, and I always find that really interesting. Okay. So now if you want to get one step further out, we talk about these. There are drivable versions of the Kubis now called the Beam Pro. There's a variety. For every tool I show, there's 10 to 15 competitors. And these are basically drivable robots. They're person height, they're on wheels, and you beam in and you move yourself just by pressing the arrow keys on your keyboard. So at the Suitable Technologies office in San Francisco, they have 50% of their employees are there in the flesh, and 50% are beaming in via robot. So it is possible to sort of work in this hybrid way. Now you're going to have some problems if your office has some stairs or pools or elevators. Then you'll definitely need help. And if you want to know how you say hello to people in the robot, you can't shake hands, of course. Instead, we do something much more 2D, and that is we fist bump. So that's a more 2D version of that. And if we get one step further out, we now have virtual reality for remote teams. And I know virtual reality has been around for about 20 years, and it's just very difficult technologies to use, so it hasn't caught on. However, it is starting to become easier and easier. Roomy is virtual reality for remote teams. You put on your goggles, you step into your virtual office, you walk down your virtual hallway, you enter your virtual conference room, and you stand around your virtual whiteboard with your virtual colleagues, all in virtual reality. So it sounds a little bit strange, but it is becoming more and more reality. And if I just take one more step further out, holograms are just around the corner. And I know that sounds very Star Trek or Star Wars in this case, but it is coming. Now I'm going to show you a quick video clip from a 2012 concert of Coachella where they used virtual reality. And it's a video clip of Tupac and Snoop Dogg rapping. So I want to just announce in advance that the language is quite offensive. It's gangster rap. I'm only going to show about a minute of it. But the reason I'm showing it is because Tupac is there as a hologram because he was killed years ago. And Snoop Dogg is there in the flesh. And they're performing live together at this concert. So just give me 1 second to cue this up. Oh, yeah, no, keep it here. No, it's good. That's Tupac.
Yeah, that's the fuck I'm talking about.
Hey, yo, Pop, let these motherfuckers know what kind of party they in right now.
Ain't nothing but a gangster party.
Oh, shit. Come on, y'all.
Ain't nothing but a two of America's most wanted in the same motherfucking place at the same motherfucking time. Gangster party. Y'all niggas about to feel this. Break out the champagne glasses and motherfucking condoms. Have one on us.
Kick that shit, nephew.
Picture perfect. I paint a perfect picture. Bomber hooches with precision. My intentions to get with you with that and double OP. Dog, my fucking homie. Use a cold ass nigga on them all.
I keep my hand on my gun because they got me on the rope.
Okay, so we get okay. So you get the idea. But this is Tupac here. He's the hologram. And Snoop Dogg, of course, is in the flesh. So you can see this is 2012, and the technology is only getting better over time. And if you didn't know that he was a hologram, I would venture to say when I first saw it, I would have no idea. So the technology is becoming pretty awesome. And where it's getting used first is, of course, in the medical field. So this is a picture from a clip in Australia. They're experimenting with doctors beaming into people's homes in order to provide good medical care. So it sounds really far out, but I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, virtual reality, holograms, telepresence technologies, all of these things are going to help us bring us closer together as remote teams and make it a much more seamless experience. And we've come a long way since, hey Bob, can you hear me now, over the spider phone. Now, if you want to see the rest of all the tools that are available for remote teams, I've got a list of about 500 tools on the website, all categorized by different things, so I definitely encourage you to check that out, see what would work for your team. But it's not about the tool. So yes, I can show up all the shiny things here that people are using, but it's about the behavior that the tools enable. So don't get caught up on the tool. Almost any tool will work. But the behavior is what's most important. And in this case, I'm showing a picture of a team that put up a photo wall. So they have offices in several different locations, and instead of using, holograms and stuff, they actually just put up pictures of their colleagues on the wall to remember who's who, and they change it by the season, or if there's a holiday coming up, they put up reasons for people to go back and visit the photo wall. So it's not about the tool, anything can work. So we've talked about making communicating easy. We've talked about how to define what normal behavior is on our team. I've shown you some ways, some creative ways of creating more presence. And now what I want to do is dive a little bit into fun and just show you a couple of ways that people are just having fun on teams. One of the easiest ways is by using virtual icebreakers. So these are just quick questions that we start the meeting with. And there's two important reasons for icebreakers. One is science shows if everybody's spoken once in a meeting, they're more likely to speak again. So to start the meeting with what's your favorite food, your favorite vacation spot, your favorite drink, something like this, just to get the conversation going. And the side effect is that we start to know a little bit more about each other. It's not just Bob from engineering, but it's Bob from engineering who likes to canoe on the weekends. His favorite color is green. His favorite place to go is Hawaii for the holidays. And you start to get a bigger picture about your colleagues. Plus, they can be really fun to answer. Another one that people are using is their group instant messaging systems, right? This is Slack, or you could use Stride. Any of them will work. And this is just sort of the fun channel where people post things, like your favorite pet. In this case, Hanu posted that he took a trip to the Dolomites and that this picture made him happy, and encouraged other people on the team to post pictures that made them happy as well. So Nadine posted her picture to Nicaragua. I posted a picture of my nephew who just makes me happy to see, and so on. So this is an easy way to integrate sort of fun on any team. And of course, there's things like virtual lunches or virtual coffees. And it sounds really strange at first until you start doing it. This is Gretchen and Laura. They worked together for years. And every Wednesday at noon, they would get together and have lunch together. And their only rule was no talking about work. So they get together, showing off their salads, their smoothies, and just hanging out every week. And if you want to get really creative, this team that I was on, we had a virtual dance party. In fact, we have regular virtual dance parties where somebody just DJs and the rest of us get up and boogie. And it's sort of a way that we use for long meetings. When we need a break in the middle of long meetings, we'll just get up, shake it out a bit, and then get back to work. So you can be very creative within this small square. Distancing. Okay, so I'm assuming that you came here because you were interested in learning on how successful distributed agile teams are making it work. And the good news is that it's not rocket science, but we do have to be deliberate about the practices and the communication protocols that we have on our team. And there's no one right way, of course. It's a series of experimentations. It's a series of trying one tool that works, maybe another tool that doesn't work, but it's just a matter of massaging something into place that works for your team. Because when you get it right, the payoff is huge. When you get it right, the people in the company have freedom. We have the freedom to avoid the commute. We have the freedom to work where we're most productive. One of my colleagues is training for a triathlon. He has the freedom to do that. But companies will also have a stronger, more connected workforce when we get this right. So when we can work from anywhere, then both sides win, and I think that's really important. And one of the most compelling reasons for companies to be able to do remote working is whether or not you allow for your people to be flexible or to go remote. We should have the processes and systems in place to be able to go remote in case something bad happens, because there's always something weird. There's bad weather, there's a bad commute, there's sick children who are at home, and business shouldn't have to stop just because we can't get to a particular location. So I think that this is one of the better arguments for allowing flexibility into the company. The keys to doing it are make communicating easy, Star Trek easy, define normal behavior on your team, make the expectations really clear, and find ways of creating presence and working out loud. And of course, don't forget to have fun. So I thank you today. I hope that you got something out of this. And if you'd like a copy of the book, come find me, and everything else is available for free on the website. So thank you very much. And I don't know if we have time for questions or if they're, I have no idea what time it is. 5 minutes? 9 minutes. Okay, so feel free to run out and grab coffee early, or if you have questions. Okay, enjoy your, oh, one question, almost. How to convince management to invest in all these tools? Well, I would say if you're a manager, first of all, you should sit in on a meeting that people are using Skype for Business. So for me, for the managers, I say get in the mud with your team. Make sure that you're experiencing what your team is experiencing, and then take those impediments out of the way. So I usually just convince managers by doing. Get in the mud with your team and see where the problem areas are. Because they want you to be efficient too, right? They want the teams to be efficient and productive as well. And when you can show them that the tools that they're using are not efficient and productive, then they're more motivated to move on.
Yeah. Hey, Lisette, this was very good. Given that I have always worked in distributed teams, this is wonderful information. But a couple of challenges that you have seen that you think that we should be aware of when going in for a full-fledged virtual remote working teams. What are the typical challenges that you have seen in your experience, and how do we be prepared for it?
I would say the biggest challenge is always communication and alignment. So people having enough communication and then knowing what our teammates are doing. And I think if you're transitioning from co-located to remote, then it's important to do it slowly. There was one team that I read about that said, okay, we're gonna try this remote thing. Everybody, for the next 2 weeks, go wherever you want, and we're gonna work remote. And of course, everybody went all over the world, and the experiment failed pretty significantly. And sadly, the company decided that remote was not for them. So I would say if you're gonna transition, do it slowly. 1 day per week, calling everybody works from home, or even just in the afternoon, have people calling in from their own offices before you take it bigger. But going remote is also a big change in your culture. So taking it slow and step by step is the best way to do it, because things will explode in ways you never dreamed of. And you want to be able to have a safe to fail environment for that. So just slow steps. Yeah. Nothing earth-shattering, of course. Oh, here comes a microphone.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. One is, I have counted at least 16 video calls during one session. Is there any lag problems? Delays within bandwidth, connection, etc. The second one is, everybody is, I assume, standing all day, and do you consider any health problems during your way of working virtual? Thank you.
Yeah, sitting is the new smoking. That's what they're saying. So sitting is the new smoking. And What's interesting is before, when we work in an office, then the office actually takes responsibility for the equipment that we use and being able to have enough breaks. But when we work remote, we really have to take the responsibility for ourselves. So for instance, at home I have a sit-stand desk, one of those electric standing desks. Those are great. I've seen other people, I've interviewed people that have walking desks, so they have the treadmills at their desk. But really the idea is just take enough breaks and take care of yourself, because sitting too long is definitely not good for us. But to your question in the beginning, all the video conferencing tools, yes, there is lag time on some tools and on others not, which is why it's important to find the tool that works best for your team and to have an excellent internet connection. So I think a lot of people try to save money with remote teams, and I'd say that when you're talking about infrastructure and equipment, that is not the place to save money, that's the place to spend money, because it will increase your productivity over time. But yeah, you know, if I'm working with people, when we interview people for the team that I'm on, if their internet connection at home is not good enough for the calls that we're having, we don't hire them. It's simply that important. We need to be able to connect with people. We have a woman on our team working from South Sudan. She's a war journalist there, and we pay extra every month to give her the bandwidth that she needs to be able to connect with the team. It's that important. So yeah, investing heavily in infrastructure, I think, is probably the #1 thing that you can do to make a remote team successful, because we need to communicate with each other. And when we don't have video, you lose out on so much information. Being able to see each other and to interact with each other that way is just super powerful, and it can't be ignored. And it's the age of video. It's time to turn the video cameras on. Yeah. Okay, one more? 5 minutes? I'll be around all day too, so we can come in and talk. I say, let's get some coffee. Yeah, thanks everybody.